Good morning, everyone. This is Mr. Barron with the solution to Monday's problem of the day. So it says the chart below shows the number of students at 4 different schools. So on the left side, we have the schools. On the right-hand side, we have the number of students. So Pine Street has 517 students. Apple Lane School has 675 students. Sanders School has 419 students. And East Side has 566 students. So part A says use estimation to decide which school has about 100 fewer students than Apple Lane School. Show or explain your estimation strategy. Next part, all the students at the schools are going to form 2 teams for a reading contest. There will be 2 schools on each team. The teams will have about the same number of students. And part B says use estimation to decide which 2 schools should be on each team. Show or explain your estimation strategy. So over here, I have a few solutions for this problem. So what I did was I just rewrote the chart. So this tells us again how many students are at each school. So the first way I did the rounding is typically how we've taught it in the past. So you underline the place that you're going to round to. So in this case, we're going to underline the hundreds place because we're going to round these to the nearest hundred. And what we want to do is we want to look at the digit to the right of that. So that digit, in this case in the tens place, is going to be the digit that tells us whether or not this 5 will go up to a 6 or stay the same at a 5. Now the rule of thumb is pretty much if it's between 0 and 4, that means that this number 5 will stay the same. If it's 5 or higher, okay, this number will go up. Basically, that's just telling us it's more than half. So if we think about that, so there's a saying that we like to use, 5 or more, let it soar, so go up. 4 or less, let it rest, which means it's going to stay the same. So in this case, so this 1, since it's less than 5, okay, tells us that this 5 is going to stay the same, so this is going to become 500. Now at Apple Lane School, they had 675 students, so again, I underlined the hundreds place. I'm going to circle the tens. So this is 7, so it's bigger than 5. So that tells me that this 6 is going to go up to a 7, so it's going to become 700. Now at the Sanders School, they had 419 students. So again, I'm going to underline the 4, okay, which is in the hundreds place. I'm going to circle the tens place, which is 1. Since 1 is less than 5, that tells me that the 4 is going to stay the same, so that's going to become 400. And the last one, we had East Side School, which had 566 students. So I underlined the 5 in the hundreds place. I circled the 6 in the tens. Since 6 is bigger than 5, okay, that 5 is going to go up to a 6, so it becomes 600. Now, we can also see this using a number line. So this is another way that we teach rounding. So if we look here, if I have a number line, so we had 517 students at our first school. So basically my choices are it's either going to be 500 or 600 is my options, because again, I'm rounding to the nearest hundreds place. So 550 is in the middle, so that's halfway in between 500 and 600. Now, if I was to put 517 on the number line, it'd be somewhere about here. And again, this doesn't have to be exact, it's just an estimate. And since it is closer to the 500 than it is to the 600, that tells us that we're going to round it to the 500. Now in our next one, we had 675 students in this school. So again, I'm going to have a choice of either being 600 or 700 to round to. Now again, 650 is going to be in the middle. So where would I put 675? Well, 675 is going to go somewhere about here on the number line. And since it's closest to 700, we're going to round up to 700. Our next one, we had 419 students. Okay, so our choices are going to be 400 or 500. 450 is in the middle. Now 419 would be somewhere over here. Since it's on that side, it's going to round down to 400. And our last one, we had 566 students. So again, our choices are going to be 500 or 600. And 566 is bigger than 550, which is our midpoint. So it's going to round up to 600. So once I have those, I can go back and fill this in the chart. So Pine Street has about 500 students. Apple Lane has about 700 students. Sanders has about 400 students. and East Side has about 600 students. Now, the first question was about which school has about 100 fewer students than Apple Lane. So if I'm looking at this, I now know Apple Lane has about 700 students. So I'm looking at which one is 100 less than that. So 700 minus 100 is going to get us to 600. So East Side School would be our answer to that. So East Side has about 100 fewer students than Apple Lane. Now our next question was about them dividing into teams. So they were going to be doing a reading contest, and they wanted to make 2 teams of 2 schools each. And again, they had to have about the same amount of students. So what I'm looking at is when I add amounts together, I want to add them so they come up with about the same amount of students. So like, for instance, if you tried 500 plus the 700, well, that's 1,200. And then this school would have 400 plus the 600, which make 1,000. So it'd be 200 more. So they're not about even. So we're trying to figure out which of these combinations I could make that would end up being the same. So my strategy when I looked at it is I always look at, well, my highest value is 700. My lowest value would be 400. So I might want to think about grouping those 2 together. And then my next highest with my next lowest. And if we do that, we end up finding out that they actually come out to be about the same. So team 1, if I put Pine Street and East Side together, 500 plus 600 is 1,100. And if I do team 2, Apple Lane with 700 and Sanders with 400, that also gets me to 1,100. And again, this is just an estimate. So if we were to look at this, they're going to have about the same amount of students. So again, your choices in this case can be Pine Street and East Side would be one team, and Apple Lane and Sanders would be another team. Hopefully you came up with the same solutions, and hopefully you guys have a great day. I'll be posting today's problem of the day later on this afternoon. Thank you.